Hi everyone, William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri YouTube series. I have to admit I'm a little surprised that the Karalli videos, the videos describing Dmitri's relationship with Vera Karalli from her perspective, have not been very popular. I kind of thought people would be ready for a change after the very terse, almost just lists those diary entries from the end of 1915, but yeah, go figure. Anyway, I will continue. In the last video, we had Dmitri and Vera finally coming together at the home of Prince Gavriil Konstantinovich and his mistress, Nina Nestorovskaya, whom he would end up marrying after the revolution. And Dmitri was apparently spending a fair amount of time with his cousin Gavriil. And yeah, good for him. And so he had been pursuing Karalli, but she had been in the Crimea, and finally pressure was brought to bear, and she finally agreed to cut her vacation in Crimea short and go and stay at Gavriil and Nina's place, and Dmitri was brought there to meet her, as she put it, to inspect her and have dinner. So that's where we left off. Well, on a bit of a cliffhanger, she was not going to come down. He arrived, and she was, according to her, not going to come down and meet him until dinner. But then there was a knock on my door, and all three of them appeared before me. So there he was. All right, here we go. I should tell you that poor D was a little embarrassed, and though I gave him the curtsy that was his due, I scarcely managed to smile, stretching out my hand in order to relieve the awkwardness of the situation. After that, D handed me my handkerchief, describing how he had visited my house in Moscow, and then he said, "But if it's all right with you, I would like to have it back to keep as a keepsake, to save as a keepsake." That's how our inspection took place. Well, he didn't say that. That's what she writes. That's how our inspection took place. Dinner was great fun. D was caustic and often made people angry, but overall he had a rather melancholic disposition. We immediately fell in love with each other, and it was clear from the start, as we recalled later, that he would not end up being the one who left me, but I him. D was on holiday, and as he was getting ready to return to Petrograd that evening, he asked Nina and G if he could take them up on an earlier offer to spend his vacation with them in Pavlovsk instead of stuffy Peterhof. So the very next day, there was another big upheaval. People were hauling furniture into the house, removing other pieces, dragging in a bed, desk, etc. The only available bedroom was the one opposite mine. The next day, D arrived around lunchtime, bringing his servant and suitcases, and that evening his adjutant came to make my acquaintance. One evening, D invited us to Petrograd to have dinner at the best restaurant. I don't remember its name now. All four of us were there, and it was on that evening that I lit up my first cigarette as a joke, since everyone else was smoking. To everyone's amusement, I coughed, scolded them all, and threw the cigarette away. But alas, afterwards I took up smoking in earnest, because D gave me a beautifully worked ebony cigarette case with diamonds, and I, like a fool, was very impressed and became a smoker, to my own present misfortune. It was pretty late by the time we got back to Pavlovsk, and D and I were on the road so long that Nina and Gavrusha sat up waiting for us and were in a state of fright when we arrived at last, called us Pulcheria Ivanovna and Afanasy Ivanovich, and asked if something had happened on the drive. But we prolonged our drives as much as possible in order to spend as much time completely alone together as we could. That was the explanation for it. By the time D's vacation was over and I returned to Moscow, everyone in Petrograd knew that D was in love with me, and it was a serious relationship. From then on, he took me everywhere. We often went for drives and even rode together in a car with the Romanov standard, though it was strictly forbidden for a member of the family to do so with a stranger. He was severely rebuked, but replied, "I do not drive around with strangers." Okay, I wonder who severely rebuked him. Anyway, yes, Dmitri was madly, madly in love with her, according to her. And this was the common response from women who wrote about him later. He was madly in love with me. Coco, to her credit, did not do that. He was not madly in love with any of these women. His diary attests to that, but we'll talk about that a little later. All right, so, yeah. Well, let's talk about it now. What happened with this relationship? Well, when he was banished, when he ended up in Persia, as I mentioned before, she wrote to him several letters, and in her letters, she told him that she was going to sacrifice herself, so to speak, and rush after him, that she would be coming to Persia, to Tehran, and he said, absolutely not. And I don't have copies of those letters. What I do have is what he wrote about them in his diaries, and saying, she's not understanding this, that things are different now, and it's a source of irritation to me. But then they did see each other again. In 1919, I believe, 1920 in London, and they spent some time together. They resumed physical relations very briefly, but it was clear to both of them that the relationship was not going to survive this intermediate period of time when they'd been separated. So, she says that looking back, they agreed that it was clear from the start, as we recalled later, that he would not end up being the one who left me, but I him. Well, I don't know for sure, but I can say that he did not want her to join him in Tehran, and he did not pursue the relationship. They got together, they tried, it didn't work out. But the whole idea of we immediately fell in love, that's what you write in your memoirs, isn't it? Okay, interesting. He was on holiday, so apparently he had some leave in 1916, and it's interesting that he had planned to spend it in Peterhof. I'm surprised he didn't just want to spend it in Petrograd, doing his usual thing, the club and all of that. But apparently he was going to go to Peterhof, and he changed his mind and decided to go to Pavlovsk. So this was the palace of the Konstantinovich. It had belonged to the late Grand Duke Konstantin Konstantinovich and his wife and their many children. And so Gavriil clearly had an apartment there. And it's interesting about Dmitri is going to be there, I don't know how long, not 6 months or anything, but he wants his furniture there. His furniture, it was almost an extension of himself, which is interesting. Even when he was at Shatov, he was still writing about his furniture and that he was worried about his furniture. And when he was in Tehran, looking back on, what had happened with the revolution, my furniture, I just got new furniture, so don't ask me what it was about furniture, but at least he's having apparently his own bed and his own desk there at Peterhof. Some kind of maybe insecurity linked to that. I don't know. So they're going to have bedrooms right across the hall from each other. But it sounds like they were, when they wanted to sort of, get together in an intimate way, it sounds like they were doing it in the car. Maybe because there were simply too many people in Pavlovsk at that time, and maybe even though it was what Nina and Gavriil themselves were doing, Dmitri was always just a little bit, well, not always. There would be times during English house parties that he would not be discreet. But yeah, he didn't, he tended to want to not be made fun of, for one thing. And not being made fun of in the sense of, disparaged, but teased. So I don't know. Maybe that's why they were doing it. This is, for me, of course, speculation. And they are compared to Pulcheria Ivanovna and Afanasy Ivanovich, who are characters from a book by Gogol, kind of I don't know if you call it a novel. It's more of a novella called The Old World Landowners. And I haven't read the book, but I know it's about an old couple who live on their estate in the country, who are just absolutely devoted to each other. And when she dies, it's heartbreaking and devastating for him. So apparently, at least according to Karalli, this is how Gavriil and Nina framed this relationship, as these two are just absolutely devoted to each other. And I do think it was Dmitri's most serious relationship. He'd been very young when the First World War started. He'd had lots of flings, but, as we know, he wasn't averse to just picking up women on the fly and having a one-night stand, women that he met in bars at the fancy hotels. But he had told, apparently, Gavriil that he wanted something a little more comforting, to have someone to come home to, so to speak, a steady person. So that's what this was, although, there was just no chance he was going to marry her, even after the revolution. So, yeah, what does she say? Everyone in Petrograd knew that Dmitri was in love with me, and it was a serious relationship. Well, everybody in Petrograd who knew Dmitri probably knew that he wasn't really in love with her, but I think it's true that they were very close for a while. Okay, and then lastly, I find this so interesting about the car with the imperial, I don't know if it was a flag or a plaque or what that was on the car saying this is a member of the imperial family, do not pull him over. Because, or whatever might have happened, because it's off limits. But what I didn't, and he made use of that during the Rasputin assassination. They specifically used Dmitri's car to transport the body to the bridge over the river because they weren't going to be stopped. But what I didn't know is this whole idea of it being strictly forbidden. So you didn't take a friend, let alone, a girlfriend, in a car that had this on it. You would have to take it off, or you'd have to use another car. But he was going to do it anyway, so somebody, possibly the emperor or the empress, told him no. And he said, I'm going to do it anyway, apparently. So, yeah, interesting. Well, so that's it for this part of the this excerpt from her unpublished memoirs. But next time, we'll have what she has to say about the Rasputin situation. So I hope that will be of interest to you, maybe more so than these last two have been. And then we'll discuss where we're going to go from there. And, yeah, I hope to see you next time. Bye.